They may be out of school, but report card season always comes around for the Carolina Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the everydayer for making this your first listen today, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I am the Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Writers. I also do some AHL coverage over at the Colorado Times. I am the co-host of the Search Castles, a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all of my dudes here at Locked On Hurricanes. Got a good show for you today as we are officially into grading season for the Carolina Hurricanes, going over individual players, 2023-2024 season as a whole, along with the playoffs, and giving some perspective how they did in the regular season and in the playoffs. And at the end of the show, going to be going over what the fans graded them on social media, and also give my grade as well. And the guy we have to start off with is the points leader himself, which is Sebastian Aho. But before we get into all of that today, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So, like I said, we are going to start off our grading season with Sebastian Aho. I mean, who else should we really start off with in the man that led the team in points in the regular season for the Carolina Hurricanes, while also missing time to boo. He did play 78 games for the Carolina Hurricanes, finishing with 36 goals, 53 assists, and 89 points. And his goals, his 36 actually led the entire Carolina Hurricanes team, along with assists at 53. And like I said, his points at 89. So in terms of goals, he was actually 3 more than Seth Jarvis, who did finish the season with 33. Big congrats to Seth. I know we'll definitely be doing him very, very soon, these report cards. And then in terms of assists, he actually beat out Brady Shea, who had 34. So a good difference in terms of assists from Sebastian Aho to Brady Shea. And then also in points, he did have 22 more than Seth Jarvis. Also leading the team at plus 34. Next best was Seth Jarvis at plus 23. Power play goals, Sebastian Aho did finish second with 11, 2 behind Seth Jarvis. Shorthanded goals, only got 1. Team leaders were Jacob Slavin and Seth Jarvis, both with 2. But in terms of game-winning goals, that would be Mr. Sebastian Aho with 10, followed by Seth Jarvis with 9, and then overtime goals. Sebastian Aho did tie with Martin Necas this year with 2, but overall, what more can you really say about the guy that they call Sea Bass, Fishy? It's you love to see it from a season like him. Of course, you know what type of season you're going to get out of Sebastian Aho, and it's good to see for the fact that, looking back at the 2023-24 season for him, he played phenomenal hockey for the Carolina Hurricanes. And you look at the fact that, overall, this was his best points total of his career. He had 89. The next best was 83 back in the 2018-19 seasons as a 21-year-old, where he had 30 goals and 3 assists. So his assists actually his career best. He was 21 years old, and his 36 goals actually tied for the third best of his career. He did have 37 back in 21-22, and his ultimate best is 38 goals back in the 19-20 season when he was 22 years old. He had 38 goals and 66 points in only 68 games. And even that year, too, he had 4 shorthanded goals. So big props to Sebastian Aho for going back to the fact that he had 4 shorthanded goals back then. But his 11 power play goals that I mentioned is second to his 21-22 season, where he had 13. So overall, assist-wise, he did really well. Goals did pretty well, too. Like I said, third best goal total of his career. Assists tied for the best of his career. But in terms of overall points, combine those together, you saw the best point total for him by over 6. and you thought he might have had a chance to go for 90. I know a lot of people were hoping he did. I was one of those people that thought he might have a shot to go for 90. And even at one point this season before, the way he was scoring at the end of December, you thought he was just on absolute fire. You thought he was going to score the lights out of the building. And there was a point where you could probably think, okay, he might get 100. Like, I really thought that Sebastian Aho was going to get 100 points, but overall, like, you really can't ask for anything better out of him for just looking back at the regular season. It was a slow start for the team. I know he had a little bit of a slower start, but then once he got going, especially after the West Canadian road trip where he held the players only meeting in their loss to the Vancouver Canucks after losing 4 straight games in Western Canada, holds the player only meeting, goes into Ottawa the next week, and just absolutely starts on an insane run for the Carolina Hurricanes. And he kind of led the way too. Him and Andrei Svechnikov at one point were just shooting the lights out of almost every single building. You thought those guys were never going to stop scoring. And clearly you saw how good Sebastian Aho was when you finished with 89 points in the season, where you thought, he did miss some games earlier in the season. The fact that he finished in playing only 78 games, played 4 less, especially with that Western road trip, kind of where he missed some time. You give him a full season, and I'm curious if he doesn't hit like a small patch of where it was like the scoring what really wasn't there for just a little bit. Who knows? You could have seen 100 out of him, but just for the fact that you look at, you get 89 points, you're one short of 90, and you did it in 78 games. Now, if you give him a full 82 game season, I wouldn't be surprised if he did get close to 100 or got somewhere in the mid 90s, because the last person to get 100 points was Eric Staal back in the 2005-06 season. Of course, we don't know what happened then. The Carolina Hurricanes won the Stanley Cup, but just overall, I don't know if you can really even talk about how, I don't think there's really any knocks you can give to Sebastian Aho this year. Time on ice, he averaged 19 minutes and 38 seconds, which was only the second most time of average time on the ice. The most he played was 20 minutes and 9 seconds back in the 2018-19 season. So this past year, 1938, second most that he's ever averaged on time. Face-off percentage was a 54.1%, 571 to 484. You'll take that. You'll take that any day of the week where you have a guy like him who's your number one center, averages over 19 and a half minutes a game, face-off percentage in the mid-50s, the fact that you get second in power play goals, you lead the team in game-winning goals. You'll take that. You will gladly take that from a guy like Sebastian Aho. Having a plus-minus of 34, that's the best of his career. Back in 18-19, he was a plus 25. So you're looking at the best plus minus of her career, and that's coming off of last year's total in 75 games in the 22-23 season. He was only a plus 8. So you go from the season before we had 8. This past season, 23-24, he had a 34, and that's his best overall of his career. Ever since his rookie season where he played 82 games back in 16-17 as a 19-year-old, and he finished that season with a -1. After that season, he has been nowhere near a minus. The only season he was close at was the 8 that he was last year as a plus 8. Every other season, plus 10 or better. And he has 2 seasons above 20. So if you're talking about Sebastian Aho and the fact that you have a plus 8, and then his actual closest to even was a plus 4 the following back in 17-18, but every other season's in double digits. So you're looking at a plus 114 for his entire career. This past season he had 36 penalty minutes. He had 216 shots this season for 23-24. And overall, that's his fourth best ever in terms of shots on goal. The most he shot on goal, 243 back in 18-19, where he finished 10th in the Hart voting, 12th in the Selke. It's kind of surprising with the fact of how good Sebastian Aho is that he's someone who's still somehow overlooked in terms of being like some people still consider him a superstar, which I don't know how you don't see him as one for how good he has been. I really don't understand that because if you look at the Corsi scores, talk about with teams having possessions and all that, where it's like, how are you faring against the other opponents? His Corsi 4 percentage, which talks about above 50%, means the team has control of the puck more than the other player, more often than not with this player on the ice. When Sebastian Aho is on the ice, the Corsi 4 percentage for the Hurricanes is a 61.5%. That means when he's on the ice, the Hurricanes have controlled the puck with him on the ice over 61% of the time, which you will gladly take that if you're the Carolina Hurricanes. And it's just like even those, if you look at the offensive zone starts, with the percentage of offensive zone faceoffs, and then you look at the defensive zone faceoffs as well. His offensive zone start percentage, 67.5%. That means if the Hurricanes are ever in the offensive zone and they're starting off, that 67.5% of the time it's going to be Sebastian Aho taking those faceoffs, making sure that the team is right where they need to be. And like I said, you look at how he was in the regular season, you will gladly take that production from him and be able to look at the score of the Corsi, where whenever he's on the ice, the Hurricanes have a good majority of puck possession compared to when he's not on the ice. And that's why he is your 1C. That's why he is your assistant captain. That's why you see him having the contract that he has. And the fact it's just we look at how the Hurricanes use Sebastian Aho, power play, penalty kill. It's like he is someone who's consistently used no matter what situation the team is in. And the great thing too is he just finished his most recent contract, which was a 5-year, $42.295 million that he signed back in 2019. Coming up for the 24-25 season, he's now going to start his 8-year, $78 million contract with the Hurricanes that he signed back in July of last year of 2023. He's got a no movement clause throughout his entire contract that starts this upcoming season for 24-25, which will pay him $9.75 million per year through the 31-32 season. And even then, in the 31-32 season, while he does have a no-move clause through the whole thing, there is a modified 15-team no-trade list that is in that last year. But if you look at the whole 8-year deal, that is Sebastian Aho. He's a Carolina Hurricane for life, essentially, with a full no-trade clause. Unless he waives it at some point, he's going nowhere. He's going to be a Carolina Hurricane. And the fact that he's an underrated superstar, I still don't know how people don't think he is, for the fact that he's got 3 All-Stars. Every year he's almost basically leading the team in points, and he has the showcase to do it. He has that clutch gene. For him being a second-round pick, which even then some people thought that it was a stretch pick to get him, he has more than shown that he is more than deserving of that pick. If you go back to his draft year, of Sebastian Aho, where he got drafted in the second round as a 35th overall selection in the 2015 NHL entry draft, I could say for certain, like 100%, if you redo that draft, he's in a completely different spot than he was in that draft of that year. Easily first rounder, no doubt. But for the fact that the Hurricanes got him at 35 in the second round, still the draft, 100%. And that's just as good as Sebastian Aho is. So we are going to talk about him some more. We did talk about the regular season. Now we're going to go and focus on the postseason for Sebastian Aho and how he did for the Carolina Hurricanes. And we'll do that here in a second on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So, like I said at the end of segment 1, where we focused a lot more on the regular season for Sebastian Aho, now we're going to come and now focus for segment 2 on the playoffs and how, the assistant captain, the Finnish forward, the guy that, you see a lot of number 20s in PNC Arena. And Sebastian Aho had himself a playoff in 11 games played for the Carolina Hurricanes. He did finish on the team. He had 4 goals, did tie with a bunch of guys in Marniches, Jake Gensel, Steph Nason, and Evgeny Kuznetsov. All of them finished 1 goal behind Seth Jarvis, who had 5. In terms of assists, it was actually Andrei Svechnikov who led the team with 9, and then Bray Shea and Sebastian Aho finished with 8 each. And then in overall points, Sebastian Aho, just like in the regular season, led the team in points in the postseason with 12. So 12 points in 11 games. You'll take that out of your number 1 center, out of your superstar on the team itself. In terms of plus minus, it was very interesting in the fact that he did finish with a +1 on the Hurricanes. Jack Drury actually led the entire team in the postseason with a +7. So big congrats to Jack Drury for being able to go out there and get a +7, and then Bray Shea and Jacob Slavin both got +5s. In terms of power play goals, he surprisingly didn't have a power play goal in the postseason. That was mainly led by Seth Jarvis with 2 and a bunch of guys with 1. And, Sebastian Aho did get a game-winning goal. And that was really about it in terms of just the stats-wise. But you look at how, yes, it was an earlier accident than people thought was going to happen for the Hurricanes. And, yeah, he didn't score, quote-unquote, a ton of goals. He did have 4, 1 off the leader that was Seth Jarvis, but he had a lot of assists. There was at one point where he was in the playoffs. You can tell he was having a quiet night of like 2 assists, 3. Like, he was putting up numbers. He was quietly putting up points like he usually does. He's not one of those flashy guys who's going to make highlight reel plays all the time, but he will still find the ways to produce. And still putting up 12 points in 11 games, you're over a point per game in the playoffs. I don't really know how much you can ask for. I know it's scoring kind of dried up, you could say, for the entire team, but not really, though. It's just there are some points in the playoffs, especially in the second round, where you wish you could have gotten more goals out of certain guys, or maybe there was more bounces that went your way. Unfortunately, it didn't really happen, but you'll still take 4 goals and 12 points out of 11 games for Sebastian Aho. He did his job. He did do what you asked of him as the number 1 center, as the number 1 guy for the Canes. And, just looking at how he was in the playoffs, like I said, he was a +1, did have 4 even strength goals, did get a game-winning goal, but he had 30 shots in the playoffs. So he did have 30, compared to last year where he did have 42. But his time on ice was 21:55, and that was the most he ever averaged in the playoffs. His next closest was back in 2018-19 of his rookie season, where he had 20 minutes and 58 seconds. So just a tad under a minute less than what you saw for the Hurricanes. And he actually had 21:53 back in the 2020-21 season. So actually, that was only 2 seconds less than he had this past year. So you look at this season and 2020-2021, that's only 2 seconds apart. And he still, when you look at shots on goal, he had 38 that playoff, and that's 11 games where he had 11 points, where he had 6 goals that year. So pretty much almost identical shot totals, maybe 8 more. Time on ice was basically almost dang near the same. And if you look at the faceoff percentage, in the regular season, Sebastian Aho did have, a faceoff percentage of 54.1. In the playoffs, he had 45.7. He won 84, lost 100. But overall, it's one of those things where you can see in the Islanders series, and for whatever reason, especially Game 4, the Islanders were winning a lot of faceoffs. They were basically just killing the Hurricanes, through Games 3 and 4, where they were just winning a majority of the faceoffs. And that's why when you look at Sebastian Aho's faceoff percentage, it's down a lot farther than you usually see him. Usually it's like 47.4 you saw in 22-23. He did have a 50.9 in 2021-22. And a lot of other ones like 48, 44%. So he's kind of somewhere in the middle of where his face-off percentages. You would love to see more of that. But, I mean, I don't know what more you can really do in terms of that. So, I mean, it's one of those things where, yeah, you would love to see a little more of a face-off percentage help from Sebastian Aho there. But, I mean, I really don't know what more you can really ask of him. But in terms of the Corsi scores, you know how I mentioned earlier for the regular season where, you know, you look at his Corsi numbers and he was a 61.5% for the Hurricanes when he was on the ice for the regular season. Then you go look at the playoffs. He had a Corsi score of 62.1, so pretty much almost on par in that aspect of, you know, when he's on the ice for the Hurricanes, he's still well into the 60% range of the Hurricanes have a lot of possession time when he's on the ice. And I know advanced analytics is still kind of, you know, one of those things where it's a little bit, you have to kind of study out more or read more to understand it. But if you look at how you do the eye test, you look how he does, and you go to the advanced stats, you can still see that it matches up to what you see with Sebastian Aho. He's on the ice a lot, power play, penalty kill, you know, face-offs, and no matter what zone you're in for the most part. And, you know, when you go to overtime, he's always one of the first guys out there in terms of 3-on-3. So when you give a guy like him a lot of time on ice and you give the possession and the speed that he has and the stick handles and his accuracy, that's why he's always someone who's consistently out there, you know, with whoever it's maybe Martin Necas or Seth Jarvis, Andre Svechnik, whoever you can think of, or, you know, at later points in the season, Jake Gensel. He was always someone that was there, and that's why you see Corsi scores where they're at. Why you see time of ice percentage where it was at. You look at how he had 89 points in the regular season, 12 in the playoffs too. That's why he was the first player to do the report cards, the season grades, because he was the one that led the team in points, but just overall, just the factor of who he was for the Hurricanes, missing 4 games of the regular season, still being able to do what he did, well over 20 more points than Seth Jarvis, was pretty much well above and beyond the assist total. Goals was still pretty close, but overall, this is the type of season you want to see out of Sebastian Aho. A career year points-wise. Assists were about the same, you know, kind of close to the goal total, but, you know, you'll take, you know, where you tie one, you have your third best, but overall, points-wise, you'll take 89. You would love to see 90 out of him, but it is what it is. But overall, I mean, you could not grade a better season for Sebastian Aho, and I know on social media there are some other people who did give different grades to what the actual grade was, which we'll go over here in a second. But yes, it was a shorter season than you won in the postseason, but overall, you can't really say that Sebastian Aho had a bad season for what he did for the Hurricanes. And I think grading wise, you have to give him probably one of the best grades for the Hurricanes. And we'll talk about that grade here in a second on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So like I said, we are going to go into the final segment, which is going to be talking about the grades and what he got, you know, from the fans, and also what this, you know, the grade that I gave him for his 2023-24 season. So went to social, mainly X, and, you know, asked, you know, for the first grade of the season from 23-24, talking about Sebastian Aho. What would people grade his overall season? You're talking regular season and playoffs. And surprisingly enough, you know, I thought he did get a majority of 1 grade, but I was kind of surprised at the fact that it was, you know, a little bit closer than I thought. I thought it'd be a little bit more into like the upper end of, you know, if you look at 50%, like above and beyond 50%, I thought he'd be way over 50, but it was a little bit closer to 50% than I thought it was going to be. So, you know, going from the bottom up, D/F 0%. If you gave Sebastian Aho a D, I'd be really concerned of what everyone else was going to get. Luckily on social media, someone did put a C, but someone said they accidentally voted for a C. They meant A. So, we'll take that into consideration too, in terms of just it was a 1% for a C, but that was an accident. So I would, give that 1% and put it to where the A was. So you would be a little bit of a different grade. But in terms of, for a B, he did get a 34%. In terms of how the actual voting went, because there was 90 votes on X, he did get a 34% for a B, and then he finished off with a 64% for an A. So depending on where that 1%, if it did go to A, you're probably looking at about 66% rather than 64-34. So you're looking at a 66% A, 34% B. And surprisingly, 66% is something I'm very interested in, the fact that I would have thought you might have gotten like maybe 75, 80% A. Then I could be like, okay, that kind of makes sense because, there's a good majority of where like, okay, yeah, here's 75, 80%. That's a good majority of people saying, yeah, he gets an A for the season. But if you take that accidental C and put that to an A, that's only 66%. And I'm kind of surprised it was that low for a season that he had where he missed 4 games but still was able to put up 89 points. In terms of the fact that game-winning goals, power play goals, and stuff like that, how much farther he was of his teammates in the regular season, led the team in power, led the team in points in the playoffs. And I don't know, he was the only really over point per game guy. So he did get an A from the fans on social media. Like I said, it's still a little bit surprising to me that it was 66% and not, like I said, not a 75 or 80, where I thought he probably would get. So I am kind of curious, let me know in the comments, if you didn't vote on the actual, X, Twitter, poll on there. Let me know in the comments what you would give Sebastian Aho. Would you give him an A, B, C, D, or F? And let me know what you think, why you give him that certain score. And let me know what you think about the X grade. Do you think that 66% is too low, too high? Is it right? So yeah, let me know if you're on the YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, let me know in the comments. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that 66%, or do you think it should be higher? And what would you give him that grade? And I'll have a graphic all ready to go on X too. So whenever if you're listening to the podcast, if you're on the YouTube side of things, and if you want to go over to X, I will be posting the graphic of the grade that he got, like what percentage, what the percentage number was. And let me know over there too in the comment section, do you agree with that? Because for me, it's surprising. I agree that, the grade that he got was definitely deserving of what he had, but I think the percentages is very different than I thought it was going to be. Like I said, for me, I thought it'd be 75% at least, at the minimum 75%. But you know what, though? If some people think that was a B season from him, okay. So, hey, that's why we put those polls up there. We're going to be doing these polls on social media for every single guy on the team. If you got points, throughout the regular season and the playoffs, you will get a grade, because what we're going to try to do is throughout the offseason, we're going to grade every single guy. I know in terms of the schedule until the draft, we're doing a player prospect profile season grade. Then after the draft, if there's still some more guys left, we'll go through the rest of the roster and do some more grades. So throughout most of the offseason, we're going to be doing a lot of grades for the guys on the roster. So the fans gave him an A. If you ask me, my grade for Sebastian Aho is an A. Well-deserved, led the team in points, greatest points total of his career, tied his assist total, his best ever assist total, led the team in points in the playoffs. Represented the team for the All-Star game for the 3rd time in his career. I don't really know how much more you can ask of him. So for me, I give him an A. I agree with the fans. He does deserve an A on the season. But like I said, on YouTube, let me know what you think. And if you're on social media, when I post, the fan grade, the graphic of my grade and the fan grade, let me know, do you agree with does he deserve an A? And let me know what you think about the percent total from the vote. That had 90 votes. on Monday. But that will wrap up this Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. I hope everyone enjoyed this report card season, 2023-24 season grades that we're going to start doing. Of course, being with Sebastian Aho, we kind of had to start with him. So let me know what you think. Did you like this? Are you looking forward to, going through the roster and seeing what people think of his grades? How do you think of how I did with, doing this? Do you like these season grade episodes, being able to go through the guys, how they did in the regular season and the playoffs, and just give my thoughts and all that stuff. So let me know what you think about that, because this is something I'm really excited to do, just be able to, go over individual players, because we went over the season as a whole, but now we're going to go into more individual guys and how they did. So if you want to interact with me more about all this, you can follow me on X at OneCheerZach. The podcast is over at LO_Hurricanes. If you go to the link tree in my bio, you can find all my articles at the Hawkers and all the newsletters I do for them as well. If you want to check up on my AHL stuff, I'm at the Calder Times. If you want to listen or watch my other podcast, the Surgecast, there's links where you can listen and watch on YouTube. And for this show of Locked On Hurricanes, there is a link to where you can listen to the show on all podcast platforms and be able to watch it on YouTube as well. And if you are on YouTube, hit subscribe, hit the bell notification, make sure it's turned on to all so you don't miss a show. Make sure to hit the thumbs up button. Let me know if you like the show itself, and make sure to share with all their Caniacs so they become everydayers just like you. We are over 870 subscribers. We're on the goal to 1,000, because if we get to 1,000, I might do something special for you guys. But I hope everyone enjoyed the show. Hope everyone's a great rest of their Tuesday. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.